My name is William Thompson. I am 75 years old. For more than 30 years, I stood in front of the blackboard as a grade school teacher, teaching children not just to read and write, but also about the importance of saying, "Thank you" and "I'm sorry." Those simple words, words of gratitude, words of apology, were the pillars I built my classroom on, and I tried to pass their weight down with every lesson. 10 years have gone by since my wife passed away. Now, I live quietly alone in a small house on the outskirts of St. Ingai, Louis, nestled in a peaceful neighborhood where the city noises have faded into the background. My days roll slowly from one to the next, measured by the seasons and the small rituals that keep me company. In the spring, the lilacs in my backyard fill the air with their faint sweetness, and when summer rolls around, the sound of cicadas seems to hum right through the window screens. Come fall, I rake up the gold and rust-colored leaves that gather beneath the old maple trees, and in the cold breath of winter, I find myself each day settled in front of the battered wood stove, looking at photographs of my one and only grandchild. My family now is my son and his wife, and, as I said, my only grandson. I'll leave his name out for privacy, but I'll say this much: if I had to choose a single light left in my life, it's him. That's the reason I go on living, truly. To protect that boy's smile. Whenever I see it, everything makes sense. Back in 2020, when my son, Michael, told me he and his wife Susan were ready to buy their own place, he confided quietly, "Dad, we're short on the down payment." I answered right away, without even pausing to think. "You're short?" I said. "Well then, let's sell my car. I don't need to be driving around at my age anyhow." It was the little sedan my wife and I had used for every errand, every drive to visit old friends. It was the last car I owned, meant to help me in retirement, but my heart didn't ache to let it go. Not one bit. If it meant helping the family, that was enough reason for me. I wanted to fulfill just one more duty as their father. Several years have passed since then. Michael and Susan bought their house in a new neighborhood farther out, and their child was born. Before long, I became Grandpa, the kind who only gets to visit once a month. But that was all right by me. Each month, I dipped a little bit into my Social Security income, about $400 or $500 at a time, to buy something for my grandson: a new toy truck, storybooks, a warm sweater, little shoes with bright laces. It was a joy just to bring a present to him. Even if a thank you wasn't always spoken, the real reward was seeing his little face light up. That sight was everything. But then, in March of 2024, I went for a checkup at the doctor's office. After a few tests, the doctor sat down across from me and spoke gently. "It looks like what we found is early-stage cancer." He told me that with surgery, there was a chance for a full recovery, but added, "Given your age, we need to think it over carefully." I didn't hesitate. I nodded quietly, and at that moment decided that I wouldn't tell anyone. I wouldn't burden Michael and Susan with this news. Telling them would only plant needless worry. Worse, I thought, they might treat me differently out of pity. That was the last thing I wanted. What I wanted, more than anything, was for our everyday life to go on as usual. Even if my body was slowly unraveling, I wanted to keep seeing my grandson smile, keep bringing those gifts, keep our simple routines unchanged. All people reach the end someday, some sooner, some later. I thought about that, and because of it, I made a new resolve. Until my very last day, I'd keep living in a way that served someone else. It felt less important that others say, "Thank you" to me. Instead, I wanted to keep telling them, "Thank you" from my side of things. With that promise to myself, I started getting ready for my next visit. I set aside a small shopping bag with a new spring sweater and a library picture book I'd picked out. All packed up, I looked forward to heading over to the place where my grandson's smile waited for me. That little corner in Michael's home where, for a few hours, the world always grew lighter. At that time, on the threshold of what would come, I couldn't have even dreamed of the words I'd soon hear. April 15th, 2024, Monday. The sky was a flawless blue. As usual, I set out from my snug single-story house with a heavy brown paper bag in my arms, bound for my son's home out in the St. Louis suburbs. The bag was stuffed with a couple of small dinosaur figurines I'd spotted at the store. My grandson is wild about dinosaurs, and a few packs of vanilla pudding because I'd noticed that was his favorite treat during my last visit. I remember thinking, he's going to be so happy today. That thought put a lightness in my step as I made my way up the brick path to the porch. With a hopeful smile warming my face, I pressed the doorbell beside the faded nameplate that said, "The Thompsons." Ding dong. A few seconds later, the door swung open and there stood Susan, my son's wife. Her hair was back in a ponytail, and she wore that faded blue sweater she always did around the house. But this time, her face was different. None of that sunny, "Oh, hi, Dad." Welcome, I'd gotten in the months before. Instead, her expression was distant. Cautious, you might say. William, what brings you by today?" Her voice was polite but cool, an edge of formality I'd never heard before. "Well, nothing in particular, really," I told her, holding out the shopping bag. "Just wanted to see my grandson for a little while, if it's no trouble." Susan barely glanced at the bag. I saw her shoulders dip with a quiet sigh. She hesitated, then said, "Would you come in for a moment? There's something we need to talk about." And right then, I can't fully explain it. I felt a bad feeling rise up inside me. Something in her stance said this wasn't going to be an ordinary visit. Keeping the door pulled in toward herself, Susan lowered her voice and went on, "From now on, well, if you want to see your grandson, we're going to need you to contribute. Say, $100 per visit." I stared at her. For a second, I thought I hadn't heard right. "I'm sorry? Did you say $100? My voice was smaller than I meant it to be. She nodded, just once, short and sharp. "It's just, lately whenever you come, our son ends up breaking something. A toy, sometimes even furniture. It gets expensive to always replace things. I know you mean well, but it adds up. So going forward, we need to make things fair." There it was. Fair. A word that felt like a padlock on the front door of my family. The way she said it made me feel as if, somehow, my being there, wanting to see my grandson, had become a line item in their family budget. I couldn't say anything. My jaw just hung there and, suddenly, behind Susan, I saw Michael, my only son, standing in the hallway. For a split second, our eyes met. He looked away, shuffling his feet on the hardwood as though if he avoided my gaze. None of this was happening. I gathered myself. "So, from now on, if I want to visit my grandson, it's $100. "Is that what you mean?" Susan answered straight. "Yes, we'd like you to do that going forward." It was completely businesslike, as if she was reading me a new set of house rules. With numb hands, I reached for my wallet and slid out a crisp $100 bill. My Social Security check didn't stretch as far these days, but what choice did I have? "Here," I said, my voice gravelly. Would this buy me half an hour with him? Susan took the bill and finally let the front door swing open. "Come in, Dad. Right this way." I stepped inside, and for a moment it felt like walking into an appointment at an unfamiliar office, instead of the home where I'd once bounced my son on my knee. In the living room, my grandson, Daniel, came racing at me with little feet thumping on the carpet, throwing his arms around my legs. "Grandpa, you came! Look what I made!" He beamed up at me, holding out a messy paper dinosaur, tape and crayons everywhere. Just seeing his smile, so honest, so trusting, made my chest tighten, almost painfully. He had no idea. "Let me see, Danny. Wow, is this a new project from school?" I did my best to keep a wide, proud smile on my trembling face, though my palms broke into a nervous sweat behind the paper bag. As Daniel chattered away, I suddenly caught a whisper carried through the kitchen doorway. Susan's voice was quiet but strangely sharp. "Told you. He just hands it over. Tomorrow we should ask for extra, call it help with groceries or something." Her words froze me where I stood. As much as I wanted to pretend I hadn't heard, the meaning was loud and clear. Just gives the money. Easy as that. Tomorrow, another 100 for groceries. What was I doing? I only ever wanted to see my grandson. I only wanted to hold him close. But now, even that little bit of joy came printed with a price tag. I clutched Daniel's drawing, trying to focus on his laugh, wondering if, somehow, love could ever really be measured by money. But then, the moment it became something I had to pay for, some part of my heart made a sound as it cracked inside me. 30 minutes later, I managed only a "see you again soon" as I set Daniel's favorite vanilla puddings on the kitchen counter and slipped quietly out the door. On the walk home, my steps dragged. A dull ache built deep inside my chest, a pain I couldn't put a name to. Is this how love becomes something you pay for by the hours? Is this what it means to be a parent? To go from being someone who's always there, no strings attached, to just another line in an invoice? That day, a little seed of doubt took root in me, a question I couldn't shake off. Earlier that visit, I'd opened my wallet in silence, feeling my fingers tremble around the worn bills, and slid a $100 note free. It was nothing especially rare, but I could feel a kind of shame pooling in my stomach as I did it. Will this? Let me have just 30 minutes with my grandson? My voice was lower than I meant, but Susan didn't hesitate. She took the bill from my hand with smooth, practiced movement. Of course. Go right ahead. Her reply was as flat and impersonal as the cashier at the supermarket, tallying up my groceries, almost like passing through the world as a customer instead of family. I walked from the front hall into the living room. And there was Daniel. He ran straight for me, sneakers thudding on the rug, his brown hair bouncing as he leapt into my arms. "Grandpa," he chirped. "You came again, didn't you? Look, this is what my teacher liked at school." He held out a tiny, slightly crumpled paper star yellow, all uneven from his first try at folding. I knelt and took it gingerly in my palm, the bright, jagged shape. A corner had torn, and the colors ran wild in little smeared spots. But Daniel's face was aglow with pride, and I felt my chest warm right through the pain. "This is wonderful, Danny. I think it's the best star in the whole world." "Really? Grandpa, you can take it home if you want." "Thank you, Daniel. I'll keep it as a treasure." And just then, I caught it. A hushed voice drifting from the kitchen. Spoken low and careless, the kind of words folks speak when they think nobody's listening. He always just pulls out the cash, easy as pie. "Tomorrow, let's ask for another 100. Tell him it's for groceries or something." The words stabbed the air. I couldn't breathe. Always just pays up. Another 100 for groceries. Tomorrow, in just the half hour I'd spent with Daniel, I'd been turned, again, into nothing more than the wallet. Not Dad, not Grandpa, just a source of cash. Daniel's laughter suddenly felt far away, his smile blurred by a cold, sinking thud deep in my soul. It was as if something small and good broke loose and fell inside my chest. Strange twist of loneliness, of humiliation, of emptiness. All tangled together, heavy, impossible to speak, but Daniel just prattled on, utterly unaware. "Grandpa, are you coming again next time? I want to make an airplane for you." Yes, I'll be back. We'll do that together, Danny." Even as I answered, I heard it. A final, hard splintering in the quiet of my own heart. His smile is real. But the price I pay just to see it keeps climbing every time. Is this still love, or is it just a deal? I didn't know anymore. Suddenly, I wasn't sure if I could ever know again. When the 30 purchased minutes were gone, I stood, brushing cookie crumbs from my lap, and began to gather my coat. Daniel seized my hand, holding tight. "Grandpa, will you bring me something next time?" His eyes gleamed with hope. I couldn't answer right away. "Yeah, I'll think about it, all right?" My lips tugged into a smile, but behind it I felt the ache as strong as ever. I slipped my feet back into my old worn shoes at the door, and as I did, I heard her voice drifting from the living room again. It was then that I knew things had changed between us. Maybe for good, or maybe, if I could summon the courage, it was the beginning of something different. But not yet. Not this visit. All I could do was step out into the pale evening sun, heart heavier than my empty wallet, and hope Daniel's little star wouldn't lose its shine before my next return. "Thank you for coming today, Dad," Susan said from the doorway, her words practiced, pleasant, and thin as gossamer. "Does next weekend still work for you? And, if possible, would you mind? Maybe a little more this time? Like 150 instead of just 100? I answered without turning around, my voice almost a whisper. "Let me think it over." The moment I stepped off their porch onto the front walk, a gust of wind slapped my cheeks, sharp and cold, as real as the truth I could no longer deny. The world seemed intent on reminding me just how harsh it could be. Even when spring touched every budding tree along the neat, winding St. Louis subdivision. On the walk home, I tried to keep my steps brisk, as if a decision might catch up to me if I hurried quickly enough. But inside, I was making a new vow. I didn't want to be a wallet with legs anymore. I was tired of being the easy solution. I wasn't meant to be a convenient presence. Love is supposed to be gentler, quieter, deeper, worth more somehow than anything that could ever pass through a hand. That night, in my empty house, I sat down alone at my old oak desk. The hours ticked past in the hush. I picked up my pen and made ready for what I thought of as my quiet rebellion, the kind I would never shout, but which might let me reclaim the smallest piece of my old self. I didn't sleep at all that night. With the lights out, lying flat on my back on the narrow bed, I could only stare at the ceiling and let the full weight settle over me. Whatever had been gathering, dull, unmoving, unspoken now sat square in the hollow of my chest. What am I even living for? The question circled through my mind over and over, looping so many times I lost count. Around midnight, I got up, padded over to the desk, and opened the bottom drawer. I took out my faded old address book, my checkbook, and a business card tucked in the back from a law office where my friend Jim Davidson once worked. The first thing I did was simple. I went into the den and destroyed my will. Once, I drafted out every detail, listing how I'd leave almost $2 million worth of savings and property to Michael, my only son. I told myself, this is my last job as a father, to take care of them even when I'm gone. But now, with my family treating me like someone who pays a ticket price just to see his grandson, that document meant nothing to me. Not anymore. So, I picked up the phone and called Davidson and Wells, attorneys at law. The call rang twice. A young man's voice answered, surprised. "Hello, this is Davidson and Wells." "I'm sorry to call so late," I said, quietly firm. "But I'd like to destroy my will immediately, if possible." There was a moment's pause, as if the person on the other end didn't quite know what to say. But I wasn't uncertain anymore. My mind was made up. After setting the phone back on its cradle, I turned to the worn file folder resting atop the desk. That's when I remembered the conversation I'd had with Thomas, a friend from my old teaching days. Thomas had worked in a nearby hospital for years and often spoke about the importance of giving back, even after death. "There's nothing more meaningful you can do, Will," he once said, patting my arm, "than to let what's left of you help someone else. That, too, is a way to keep on living." So, I gently slid the donation registration form from the folder. Hands unsteady, I read it through. I signed my name with careful strokes, sealed it in an envelope, and set it aside for the next morning's mail, feeling a strange sense of dignity coming back, however small. But the biggest task of the night wasn't paperwork. I reached for a fresh sheet of lined paper and my favorite ink pen and began to write a letter, this time, addressed to the only person who still mattered beyond measure. "To Daniel," I wrote with trembling hand. A warm tear dropped and blotted the ink, bleeding the words into a tiny purple cloud. "When you first smiled, Grandpa was the happiest man in the world. The first time you called me Grandpa, you gave me a treasure more precious than anything I ever earned. But, sweetheart, Grandpa is feeling a little tired lately. If one day Grandpa is suddenly gone, please don't be angry with anyone about it. It's not anybody's fault. And if you just keep being the gentle, kind little boy you are, that's all you ever need to do. I left the letter unsealed, quietly waiting atop my desk. I wasn't ready to mail it yet. Maybe I never would be. Dawn crept up at last. I tucked the donation envelope under my arm and made my way to the bank. Inside the cool, silent lobby, I approached the teller window and quietly slid my checkbook and ID toward the young woman there. I'd like to donate the entire balance of this account, about $1 million to this organization, I said, passing over a slip with the foundation's name. For charity, Mr. Thompson? Her gaze held respect, her voice was gentle. Yes, please, just let me know what paperwork I need to sign. Well then, she said with a nod, I'll get everything started for you right away. As she walked away to prepare the forms, I took a breath, steady and deep. It wasn't easy to give everything up, but I felt lighter already. For the first time in a long while, it almost felt like I was making a choice for myself. This, I thought, might just be a new kind of beginning, even at 75. The balance on my bank statement read approximately $1 million. That was everything I had managed to save over a lifetime. Years of teaching, every paid-off mortgage, every Social Security deposit, all those months and years spent cutting corners. It was all I had, every dollar squeezed and stacked, trying to build something that might matter for someone else someday. As I signed the last of the papers and waited silently in the cool, echoing hush of the bank, I found myself with not a single word to say. Instead, I let my gaze drift beyond the glass, watching the tulip poplars lining the street outside as their new leaves quivered in the late spring wind. Somewhere close by drifted the laughter of children, a bright, ringing sound breaking through the otherwise solemn quiet. Money, for me, had always only ever been a tool. Nothing more than that. But if, somehow, that tool could make someone else smile, that would be enough. Later that day, I let it all go. My life's savings, my plans, every hope I'd harbored for years about some shining, comfortable future. Even the last illusions I'd been clinging to about what my family was or might become. Yet still, my heart was calm, steadier than I'd dared hope. For the first time in a very long while, I felt sure I could live with no regrets. I could honestly say to myself, this is enough. Only one thing still lingered, a memory I could neither shake off nor surrender. The tiny warmth of my grandson Daniel's hand, slipping quietly into mine again and again, that single touch wouldn't leave my chest, no matter how I tried. A week later, on an ordinary morning just like any other, I found myself on the back porch with a mug of barely warm green tea and my small notebook in my lap. The garden had begun to fill in at last. I was making a few lines about the roses, how the yellow ones opened wide now at dawn, and the peonies had begun to push up through the mulch, just as they always did when the weather turned. That's when the doorbell rang, sharp and sudden, the sound slicing right through me. Odd how a simple chime, nothing at all on most days, could seem so harsh. When I opened the front door, I found Michael and Susan, my son and his wife, both standing there, their faces pale and drawn. Michael's voice trembled. Dad, why did you cancel the will? Why didn't you tell us you were sick? He was holding himself rigid, hands balled into fists at his sides, his eyes flickering with confusion, anger, bewilderment, and something close to fear. But I wasn't surprised. I simply nodded and gently showed them into the front hall. There, on the table by the door, rested my old notebook. I've carried it nearly everywhere for 5 years now, scrawling memories and little notes that mattered only to me. I picked it up with careful hands and laid it open before them. This is the record I've kept, day in and day out, for half a decade, I said softly, flipping carefully from one page to the next as I spoke. January 10th. The day you asked if I could give a little extra for Daniel's New Year's gift. March 3rd. The day you told me, if you want to see your grandson, it starts at $100. July 19th. The day Daniel looked up and asked me, Grandpa, why are you getting so thin? Page after page, date after date, each entry quietly listing the mundane and the heartbreaking. Next to nearly every one, I had scribbled a simple sketch of Daniel's bright smile, or a tiny scrap of conversation that mattered most. I didn't write these things to make you feel guilty, I told them, my voice gentle. I didn't want to forget how this felt. I needed to get it down somewhere, since I couldn't tell anyone out loud. I sat right here, opened my checkbook, slid cash into an envelope. That was the only way I thought I could keep us together. My son remained silent, staring down, his fingers clenched shut, white-knuckled on his knees. He couldn't move. But Susan's voice shook as she said, "I'm sorry. I really didn't understand. I thought it was I never guessed it hurt you this much. Not this deeply." I smiled at her softly, without blame, and shook my head. "You didn't come here just to apologize, did you? What you really want to know is why I let go of everything. Why I made these decisions. It's because I believed in the word family. I gave everything, held nothing back. And when I found out, when that word lost its meaning, its weight broke something deep inside me. There was nothing left to support it." Michael finally looked up, tears shining in his eyes. "Dad, can we start over, even now? Can we be a real family again? Please, let's face each other, honestly this time." I reached for the envelope sitting at the far corner of the desk. A simple, unsealed letter I'd written for Daniel, my only grandson. That letter had waited for this moment. My hands trembled as I turned it over, ready to pass it on, even as the sunlight spilled quietly through the kitchen window onto us all. And with it, something between us, between father and son, husband and wife, and the little boy we all loved, finally began to heal. For the first time, we were no longer prisoners to old wounds or to price tags. We were just a family, trying again. And, for me, that was the new beginning I never expected to live long enough to see. I haven't mailed this letter yet. Maybe I haven't fully given up just yet. But please, let it be your actions, not just your words, that show me. I won't be moved by money anymore. Maybe I don't have much time left, but if those days can be filled with real love, then that's more than I could hope for." My son Michael lowered his head, shoulders shaking, and his wife Susan dabbed her eyes again and again, both quietly whispering, thank you so much." I poured out one more cup of tea and, inside, I thought quietly to myself, this won't bring everything back to the way it once was. But surely there's still a way to start over. No matter how many seasons have turned and passed, I believe now, more than ever, in a spring that dawns from a simple act of apology. Even now, I live alone in this small house just outside St. Louis. The world around me is just the same as always, the sun slanting across, the porch out back, the morning steam curling from my tea, the chatter of songbirds drifting through the open window. But inside, quietly and slowly, my heart has begun to change. Every weekend, the sliding glass door at the entry rattles open, and a burst of laughter fills the house. "Grandpa, I came to play. That's Daniel, my grandson." He rushes in, arms thrown wide, and jumps into my waiting embrace. His warmth is the very thing I'd spent so long longing for. It's something money will never buy, something that, truly, sustains me now. An irreplaceable treasure. Michael, once so silent and distant, doesn't just slip inside with downcast eyes anymore. He bows his head at the door softly, a bit sheepish before stepping in, carrying grocery bags or a paper sack of snacks for Daniel. "Dad, let me make dinner tonight," he said one evening. The first time I saw him, my grown-up son, setting out a frying pan in my kitchen, I couldn't help but weep a little. I'd never seen him cook for me before. The miles between our hearts, the coldness in his back as he left so many times in silence. Now, little by little, those things are disappearing. Such ordinary, miraculous weekends. Susan, too, copies down my favorite stew recipe into her own tattered, spiral-bound notepad, promising with a smile, "Next time I'll try making this for you." Of course, not everything has returned to the way it was. Not completely. There are still awkward pauses sometimes, and some nights, memories still squeeze my chest too tightly to sleep. And yet, despite it all, the hours we spend wishing, trying, hoping to truly be a family again. It's these very moments, and our steady work together, that truly begin to repair the bonds between people. What matters most, I've come to see, is that the first step didn't come from words. It came from changed behavior, real, visible effort. It's only once something is lost that we're finally able to see it for all it was. Love doesn't come with conditions attached or a ledger of exchanged favors. It rests in accepting someone completely as they are. That's what I believe. That's why, on that spring day when I decided to let everything go, to release my expectations and my regrets, that moment wasn't the end for me. It truly was the start of something different. Now, in my little workroom off the hallway, a drawing Daniel made hangs on the wall, done in mottled green and bright red crayon. Eating sandwiches in the park with Grandpa, it says in big, crooked letters. The shapes and colors are messy, the words misspelled, but their warmth glows brighter than any inheritance ever could. That one picture keeps the whole room full of life. If, back then, I'd quietly swallowed my pride and just let things go unchanged, I know I never would have known this happiness, these new Saturdays filled with laughter. Love can't be bought. Such a plain truth, one we often forget, has finally taken root in this family of mine, slowly growing where so much had withered. And so, right now, here, in this gentle, ordinary moment, my heart is truly full. I don't have every answer, and I don't know how much longer I'll walk these old halls or tend the wind-worn yard. But I do know I found something priceless. The feeling, at last, of being home again with the people I love. That, for me, is more than enough. No matter how much time I have left, no matter whether my days can be counted on fingers or stretch out just a bit longer, these weekend reunions have become the reason I keep living. They are what give my life meaning, what fill my empty house with warmth, even if only for a little while. So, let me ask you, if you were told you had just 1 month left to live, who would you choose to spend that precious time with? Who is the person whose face you want to see at sunrise and sunset? Who would you make time for no matter what? And when those days begin to slip through your fingers, who would you want to say thank you to? Who has given you a kindness you never returned, a love you never truly thanked? What words are still sitting in the quiet, unsaid? I hope, with all my heart, that when your moment comes, when you, too, must face a final goodbye, you won't wait until the last day to speak that gratitude. Don't wait for sorrow or for regret. Please notice your own true feelings, the honest heart you carry inside, before those chances run out. Look closely, listen gently to what you carry, and then, right now, in whatever way feels right, share those feelings. Tell your loved ones you're thankful. Let your actions and your words line up so there's nothing left unsaid. Trust me, it's never too early to say thank you. Sometimes all it takes is those simple words, a real, honest thank you, to begin healing, to bring back light, to make life feel full again, even as the seasons turn and time runs short. Don't wait, and don't think there will always be more time. Life, family, and love, they are as fragile as they are precious. So don't keep those feelings locked away, hidden until it's too late. Let them shine today in your words, your gestures, your open, vulnerable heart. Because the truth is this, every moment, every thank you matters. Every little bit of kindness, every bit of real feeling, makes this life worth living.